Now, the other issue why it was withdrawn, the plan for housing for Ormskirk was withdrawn from the plan before it could be consulted.
Yeah, there was originally options A, B, and C. Option A, which is the details that I've sent you, was sort of land to the southeast of Ormskirk, near to the university. And that was 60 hectares of land, with greenbelt land, where they were proposing to build 600 homes, business units, a sports village, and off-site student campus, which would have housed 700 students. So obviously that would have relieved some of the issues about student accommodation in the town. But obviously that proved very unpopular with people living in Ormskirk. And I'm on the planning committee, Roger, and if there's any development on and around Edghill University, there's an outcry of a feeling, if you like, and they're very much opposed to it, especially if it's on greenbelt land. So what happened really was, before the document went out to consultation, Council decided to withdraw option A and decide option A was non-preferred. And basically
that's
it was...
That's cowardly, isn't it? You're saying, we don't think they'll like it, so we won't let them consult on it.
Well, basically, it was a political decision by the Conservative administration. From a Labour group perspective, we wanted the public to be consulted on all the options A, B, and C, and that didn't happen. So basically, option A was dead in the water before the document went out, and that's what happened, and I think Roger probably knows that, and maybe one or two other journalists, but that's actually what happened. So, again, there's been pressure from Ormskirk residents, especially residents who live near to the university, put pressure on the Conservative administration to say, well, we don't want that development. But so they chose not to go ahead with it.
What I find really weird is, but you don't want to go ahead with it, then go and make that point through the consultation. I just don't understand. It just seems wrong to me that if you've got a consultation, you have a consultation about all the plan.
Well, what it was a bit of a fudge, really, Roger, because they said, well, we're not going to include it as one of the main options, but we'll include it as a non-preferred option. But basically, when they did that, it was dead in the water anyway. Because no matter what residents said, whether they supported option A or not, I don't believe the Conservative administration would have gone ahead with those plans. And the main problem we've got with all the options is there's not enough land to build housing on, so we're going to have to build on some greenbelt. And the situation we're going to be faced with now is a lot of homes, the vast majority of the homes being built in Skelmersdale, some homes in Up Holland and some homes in Berska, and a strong opposition from Up Holland and Berska, because Berska residents saying, well, we don't want all the houses here, what about Ormskirk? And, there's a bit of a row going on at the moment as to where all these homes are going to be built. But, I heard Roger speaking earlier, and he's right, we need to build more homes in West Lancashire, and there's not enough sort of brownfield sites to provide all the homes that we need. So all these greenbelt issues are coming into it.
I don't know if you heard the email I read out from George, which said that he's waiting for a rebuttal for the statement he made about Skelmersdale being used by the Tories as a cash cow for the gentrification of Ormskirk at the expense of Skelmersdale. And I know you're not a Tory, have you got a comment about that?
I'm certainly not a Conservative, but I can understand where he's coming from. But I don't agree with all them comments myself. But we have got major issues in Skelmersdale, towards redeveloping the town. And one thing we do need is a railway station. But for many years now, we've seen a lot of money being pumped into Ormskirk and Berska and other areas, and not enough in Skelmersdale. And we've been batting on about it for years, and we're still going on about it now. And a lot of people you speak to in Skelmersdale are very concerned, because all we want is what facilities that other towns have. Like a cinema, better shops, more supermarkets, a railway station, and we've been batting on about that for 20-odd years.
But aren't you getting a new town centre which is going to include a cinema?
We are, yeah. But some of the plans that, the original plans were going to provide for much more than that, but obviously because of the financial climate we're in at the moment, some of those options are not going to be considered at this stage. So the railway station is always going to be a long-term plan. We're not going to get the wet and dry sports centre that we wanted. We're not going to get all the housing and retail that we wanted. So we're very much we're going to get some improvements in the town, but not as much as what we wanted. But
okay, Roger wants to come back on what you said, Neil.
Hi, Neil. It's Roger here.
Hi, Roger.
Just a point, I was at the press call for the briefing regarding the local plan. And developers do want to move into West Lancashire, but developers do not want to move into Skelmersdale. I think, like it or not, Skelmersdale has still got something of an image problem. The land is there to build on, but I think developers say if we can move into West Lancashire, we'll move into a place where we can make far more money. Now, whether they're right or wrong, I don't know, but just a point I'd like to make anyway.
I can understand where you're coming from, Roger, because one of the reasons we're getting that is because the town centre isn't developed to such a standard to attract people to live in those homes, and developers don't want to do it because they're perhaps thinking we're not going to get a lot of money for the houses there, and we're going to be left with properties we can't sell. You know, if we want Skelmersdale to move forward and we want to have additional housing around the town centre, we're going to have a better town centre, much better than what we've got now, and we're going to have a railway station so people can travel to Liverpool and Manchester. That's what we need, and it's a big problem, but you know, they want to build houses in Ormskirk and Burscough because they've got the rail links. They don't want to do it in Skelmersdale. We haven't got the railway links.
It's a fair point for somebody who doesn't really understand the situation. It makes sense what you're saying, Neil. There's somebody else want to speak, I think.
Hi. I just want to say one thing. I was at the council meeting when option 1 of the local plan was withdrawn, and it was said by the councillors that the public would not understand the complexities of 3 options, something which I find extremely patronising. So right from the beginning, it was a washout.
And I agree with what you're saying. I thought that was an absolutely ridiculous comment to make, that people couldn't understand options A, B and C. I've seen the document that went out, and it was quite clear what's being planned. I mean, I've just sent Roger Phillips an email with a map of the area and what was proposed in each option is quite straightforward. And it was a ridiculous comment for somebody to make that people wouldn't understand all the options. It was clear what the options were, and that's why, from a Labour group perspective, we wanted all of the residents, to see all of the options, so he could give us your opinions on them.
I find, honestly, no, I didn't know what that. I did not know that, what the ladies just said, and I just find that extraordinary that anybody, any councillor in any situation, or any MP or anybody should say that the people in the area are so thick that they can only understand 2 things. They can't cope with 3 at once. I would be, if I was voting, I'd be voting to get rid of every single councillor who said that.
And another thing worth mentioning is that Skelmersdale has an existing infrastructure for around 80,000 people, so I'm led to believe by councillors, and of which there's only about 40,000 people living there. So the infrastructure is actually there. Where the council wants to dump all these houses is Burscough on a site called Yew Tree Farm. Well, certainly we're talking about 500 houses now, and safeguarding 500 later on in 10 or 15 years' time. Now, that area is prone to flooding now. It has a whole range of other infrastructure problems that Skelmersdale currently has. That there's big wide roads, more or less empty, but the council seems intent on dumping them on Burscough. And not only that, it's not prepared. It doesn't appear to be prepared to listen to what local people want. Now, there is actually an action group called the Burscough Action Group, which is running a petition, taking people's objections and making notes of people who are actually in favour of the proposed developments. Now, a couple of weeks ago, when on the day that the Olympic torch came through Burscough and Ormskirk, the Burscough Action Group had approximately 25 signs lying down the A59 saying messages like "Save our green belt," "Keep the green belt for our children," things like that. Now, interestingly, overnight, the night before, between 10 and 2 in the morning, all these signs, every last sign saying "Save our green belt," was stolen, and they were stolen from people's front gardens, people's private property. There was trespass, there was criminal damage, there was theft of all these signs. So the point I'm making is that the issue that we're talking about now, that the local plan and the council's response to it, and failings, I think, to take into account what people want, that there's some very, very murky goings on. It's a real can of worms that people, I don't think, are aware of, because certainly the Ormskirk Advertiser hasn't ran this story, and they have been provided with the story about the sign thefts, but
Well, that's interesting, because if Andrew is listening still, Andrew Evers, he'll check why it's not being run, and hopefully it will be run, and Roger presumably will be running in his. I think the thing is, it's strange though, that if you're, I mean, I'm sure it's not, but if you were to be accusing the council of taking down those signs, and I'm sure you wouldn't be accusing